and 01700. By the way, those will be the numbers you'll use to be a part of this evening's discussion. Again, thank you all very much for joining us. This is your voice in the community, talk that get results. This evening, Conrad Naya Liebert, good evening.
Good evening, Webbo. And good evening to your staff here at One Radio and to my colleagues, Mr. Stanley and the Honorable Spencer Brand. Good evening. To everyone in tune to this program, good evening, as we gather once again to discuss the issues affecting the people. Webbo, it's always a pleasure for me to come and speak and to sometimes communicate and to relay messages that people sometimes ask me to communicate to the public. Webbo, I find it's quite a good thing when we can speak of such issues and attempt to make life better and easier for some. Webbo, thank you for having me once again, and I look forward to a healthy debate tonight.
The Honorable Spencer Brand, good evening.
Good evening, Webbo, and a very pleasant good evening to my colleagues, Mr. Stanley and Mr. Liebert, Naya. Good evening to our listening audiences, those who are viewing via the various online platforms and those who are listening to One Radio. I want to say a very pleasant good evening to those persons who are feeling a bit down tonight for one reason or the other, those folks who are in the morning column. I also want to say good night to my good friend there, Abonati, on the loss of his mom, and those of us here in the Ramsbury area would have lost our dear friend Janice, speechless. And to all those other families who are in mourning, I know that for some it's a very sad evening, but I hope that they can remember their loved ones with fond memory. To those who are in our various hospitals here in St. Kitts and Nevis, and those who are further afield seeking medical attention, I hope that they would soon be up and about. To those who are celebrating, whether it's a birthday, a wedding anniversary, or some accomplishment in their life, I certainly want to wish them a wonderful evening. Webbo, I want to thank you for the invitation tonight, and I'm indeed looking forward to tonight's discussion.
Edric W. Stanley, good evening.
Good evening, Webbo, and good evening to my fellow panelists, and good evening to the people who are in St. Kitts and the glorious and the gracious people of Nevis, those who will be listening to us on the World Wide Web and throughout the Caribbean Basin, and further afield, the world indeed. Webbo, tonight I want to offer a piece, well, let me entitle it Perspectives. The late Sir Simeon Daniel had two acolytes, and he in fact brought them to the fore. One is a little older than the other, Victor J. Martin, who is a lawyer, and the Honorable Mark Brantley. Well, let me call Victor J. Martin also Honorable Victor J. Martin. Unfortunately, he didn't have the tenacity to, in fact, get to the wheel of the ship when the ship ran aground. He obviously allowed the Honorable Joseph Parry to force him to the wheel to command the ship and to bring it back into victorious waters. As a result, I'm not sure if the party would have wanted the Honorable Victor J. Martin to command the ship, but at the same time, I think he had the capacity and the intellectual ability to command the ship and to bring it into victorious waters, sail it into victorious waters. At the same time, it might have been a power struggle and indeed a political battle to wrangle the wheel from the Honorable Joseph Parry. Anyhow, as time passed, the Honorable Victor J. Martin stayed on the ship, and the ship was repaired and sailed into victorious waters. I'm not sure of the date, but they were back in government, the NRP, and as a result, they spent a term and a part of a term
2006 to 2013.
to 2013. Thank you, Mr. Brand. Now, at the same time, the Honorable Mark Brantley was somewhat in the shadows. Might have been in law school still, but to our amazement, as the Honorable Sir Simeon Daniel alighted the ship and the wheel was taken over by the Honorable Joseph Parry, time passed and the Honorable Mark Brantley was able to influence the thinking of Sir Simeon Daniel. And instead of Sir Simeon Daniel sticking with the NRP, he in fact threw the mantle or his weight, political influence, behind the Honorable Mark Brantley, who of course was of a different party. How did that happen? It tells you something about the Honorable Mark Brantley. It tells you something about the other brilliant lawyer, the Honorable Victor J. Martin. Both were schooled, both were tutored under his tutelage. But Victor J. Martin came back, attempted to revive his political career, and I told him there was no place in Nevis for you as a brilliant lawyer. Go back and find some little entrance into the offices of Johnny Cochran and make yourself some decent money. He didn't take the advice, and as a result, he failed to capture the seat of A. Michael Perkins. However, that is history. Why did the Honorable Mark Brantley was able to get the nod from the Honorable Dr. Simeon Daniel? Of a different party? There had to be something unique about the Honorable Mark Brantley. As a result, he is now at the helm of the CCM party, given the blessings of the Honorable Simeon Daniel, Dr. Simeon Daniel. And I think he's doing very well in terms of leadership. Can't please everybody all the time, but those who you please, make sure they're in the majority. And as a result, I congratulate the Honorable Mark Brantley for having the sustaining capacity and power, political power, to continue to lead the CCM party upward and onward. There are 4 parties now that are attempting to unseat him. 3 are attempting to unseat him. One fellow who seemingly, I mentioned here one evening that his son, who is supposed to be a political heavyweight in terms of analyzing where things are going politically in St. Kitts Nevis, but more particularly in Nevis. And to my amazement, I was told, well, not to say anything else on the matter. At the same time, he came on the next week and had a lot of firepower in terms of his dissertation. And when I look through what he said in terms of capacity and history, seemingly all his classmates, or most of his classmates, were at that level where they were able to exert a lot of influence, and as a result, in politics at that higher level. However, seemingly things are beginning to fizzle out on his part. Webbo, I leave it there.
This This is Thought That Get Results with Edric W. Stanley, the Honorable Spencer Brandon, Conrad Naya Library. Your phone calls on 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700. Now, I just wanted to, I was getting some technical assistance here a little moment ago, but I just wanted to start off by highlighting something in reference to some of the earlier discussions that we have had, including last week, and the vaccines. By the way, let me just mention here that Dr. Thwaites will be having another discussion with him on Thursday morning at 8 o'clock, right here on Vaughan Radio. Thursday morning at 8 o'clock, Dr. Thwaites. It's only an hour, so make sure that you organize yourselves and you're with us. You've got any questions or comments you'd like to make, anything you like clarified, and we'll be discussing the vaccination, the vaccines, and COVID-19, all things related to that. So that's coming up. Please tell your friends and so on about it, so that we be there 8 o'clock on Thursday morning. Now, so I wanted to mention something that was discussed last week at the NEOC briefing, which they had in St. Kitts, and Dr. Laws was given some information with regard to the COVID-19 positive cases and a breakdown in terms of the persons who had the vaccine or had they are tested positive, those who the percentage that were described as unvaccinated, those who were vaccinated, and those who did not declare. And I found it interesting, so we sought some further clarification from Dr. Laws, and today she addressed it at the Prime Minister's press conference. And more importantly, I would add that she went on and she described the current situation in St. Kitts and Nevis. So it's only a couple of minutes, and I am going to play it now, and then on the flip side of it, then we can look at it.
Now, in terms of the New York press briefing on the 22nd of this month, in my report, I referred to data regarding the cases as of September the 18th. And what I said was 51% of the cases up to that date were unvaccinated. 17.4% of the cases as of September 18 were fully vaccinated. 8.2% of the cases were partially vaccinated, and 23.4% no data. Now, every case upon diagnosis is interviewed by the case manager, and one of the questions asked in that interview, are you vaccinated? And some individuals, they either refrain from answering, or they seem to be unsure of the answer of a question that's either yes or no. And so we feel that most of this subset of persons are unvaccinated. However, we check and verify every bit of data that we report. And so the statistician and epidemiologists, they are in the process of looking into the COVID-19 or the national COVID-19 vaccine database to verify the vaccination status of this subset of individuals, the 23.4% of individuals, which comes into that section or segment in the pie, no data. So for now, it's no data, but once the data is verified, it will be we will inform you in terms of the vaccination status of the cases as we go along. And so I just want to use this opportunity to speak to the COVID-19 virus as at present or currently. Now, 2, 3, 4 weeks ago, I spoke to clusters of COVID-19 cases. When we look at the data now coming out of the contact tracing process, individuals or positive cases are now unable to tell you, who they were in contact with, who were positive. And so the virus is spreading at a significant level, and so our risk of exposure to the virus when in the public space is increasing. And so we need to be very mindful in terms of our adherence to the COVID-19 preventive and protective measures. And most importantly, those of us who are unvaccinated, we are reaching out to you. Empower yourself with the facts about the vaccines. We now have 2 options. Come on board and protect yourself. So in other words, you can leave your house, go to the supermarket, go to the pharmacy, or go to the wherever, and your risk of exposure to the virus is now higher than it was a few weeks ago. And so you need to protect yourself in terms of vaccination. That's the best tool we have in our bag at this time. Wearing your face mask at all times, hand sanitization, and distancing yourself from others.
Okay, so that's it. And I want to say at this particular point that I want to thank Dr. Laws. We sent her a question here, that same question for clarification here from One Radio. And she did, in my view, an extended explanation, and especially the last part. Now, also I'd like to point out something that she said in reference to the statistician and the epidemiologist. Right? Because how many times have we sat here and heard somebody disputing or suggesting that this task force needs an epidemiologist? And here's Dr. Laws speaking to the statistician and the epidemiologist who are working on certain bits of information, and then we'll get back to them. And this is a thing sometimes that you get a little weary of, but when you have certain experience, you keep trying. And so this information came up, and I'm glad, and I wanted to point it out. Once more, the task force has an epidemiologist in it. Now, you can always debate, and I don't understand how sometimes people can say somebody don't know what they're doing and they don't know who the person is. So, so that point was brought out there, so I hope that will put that to rest. Now, the other thing that I realize that Dr. Laws had pointed out also is that a number of persons are not answering certain questions. And it bears out again the point, how many times did I ask a question? So you're going to test everybody? Okay. What if the persons decide that they don't want to be tested, or they will not be tested? And everybody remembers that the answer that I would get, the pushback I would get with that. Here it is, Dr. Laws is saying that persons diagnose, ask questions so that they can help and get the things under control, and people are not answering the question, are you vaccinated or not?
Simple. Simple.
What you might think is a simple question, right? So I just wanted to point those out. And then finally, the last point that she made, when she says our risk is increasing, and she explained why. So I don't know, as I said, that's my bit. I don't know what others got from it.
Webbo, the numbers as highlighted by Dr. Laws is very telling. But of concern is the 23.4% of persons who choose not to give any indication as to whether or not they are vaccinated. And that would be double check and confirm whether they are not or whether they are. But let's assume, Webbo, that 23% that did not provide any data. Let's assume that 50% of them was unvaccinated. And that gives you 11.5%. 11.5 plus 51, that gives you about 62% of the total number of persons that are severely affected during this pandemic because of the incidence on the transmission of the COVID.
My arithmetic tells me more like 70 something.
No, what I did, I took 50% of the 23.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, all right.
Right?
I got you.
Let's assume, yes, it's actually actually 74%.
Yes,
but let's assume that the data that encapsulate that group of persons that does not provide any information, let's assume that 50% of them are unvaccinated. Then you take that 51% of the unvaccinated that disclosed, and then 11.5, that give you approximately 62%. And it is saying that at least 2/3 of the persons in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis that have been severely affected and impacted by COVID have been the unvaccinated persons. And if you were to use the complete 23%, then that goes up to 74%.
You know, different people make their case differently.
Yes.
Because if I am making my case and I got you with yours, I'm going to ask the question of Naya. Naya, how likely you think a person who is vaccinated under these circumstances will be unwilling to say that they're not vaccinated?
I'm going to get to that.
Oh, you get into that?
That's my question.
That was your question, but Edric looked like he likes to answer for you these days.
No, I don't want to be like my friend.
I think most people who are vaccinated would find it easy to say that.
Okay, right. That's what I thought too. But you know, sometimes people tell me that I'm not either average or normal, so sometimes I have to check. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Brand. You say you were not finished.
The point is that it is clear, Webbo, that the persons that continue to be severely affected and impacted by COVID, not only here in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, but globally, the data continue to bear that out are the persons that are unvaccinated. We have heard in recent news reports coming out of Florida that the COVID situation in Florida has turned out now to be a pandemic of the unvaccinated. We have seen that across different parts of the world. So my encouragement to our people here once again is to please try and get yourselves vaccinated. You now have two options. Some people said that they were waiting for a second option. They now have a second option. I think that we have now have quite a significant section of our population who have been vaccinated. Some persons say that they've been waiting, they want to see what will happen. I think that there is enough data and enough evidence. So I want to encourage our people once again to please protect themselves. The interesting thing about that, well, it may not be so interesting, but it might be a more scary thing than anything else. Because the doctor also highlighted that the risk is also increasing. The risk is increasing, Webbo, because there seems to be an increase in what we call community spread. So, and I think that some persons are letting down their guard, some persons are not necessarily following all of the necessary protocols and so on, so that the risks are increasing. That again is a clear indication that our people need to get themselves vaccinated in order to give themselves that level of protection.
But isn't it also correct that it's not only the unvaccinated people, but there are others who perhaps are taking on greater risk as well, because they probably feel they're vaccinated, and so the other protocols they don't pay a lot of attention to. Isn't that so
Yes,
as well? Let me take this. Good evening. Thank you for holding. Good evening. You're on the air.
Amen. So, what's your right? So when the mark of the beast come, you gonna take it?
Enjoy your evening. It look as if because I lifted the ban on him, he taking advantage of it, you know. Anyway, go ahead. Yeah, so I was saying that also, is it not true that you find that now that some persons are vaccinated, they are perhaps discarding some of the other protocols, and also in the report that Dr. Laws gave, you may not necessarily know sometimes who is vaccinated or who is not, because you know you might make certain assumptions, because for instance you might see some persons maskless and you might think they're taking on this extra risk because they are vaccinated, and as the report indicated, maybe not.
I think that our people just need to continue to follow the necessary protocols, even though that they may be vaccinated. And if you are not vaccinated, I suggest that they ensure that they are vaccinated as quickly as possible, because as Dr. Laws indicated, the risk in our community continue to increase.
Well, I recognize that the Youth Parliament President, I think his name is...
Before we go on to something else, let
it's right up the alley.
Oh, okay. Go ahead. Yes, go ahead then.
The President has stated, I think his name is Patrice Nesbitt, I don't know, maybe he's the son of Junior. And the topic that they brought to the fore, that they debated, he in fact was on the side of mandatory vaccination. How come all around us we're hearing mandatory, mandated, but yet we have not amplified it from our leadership platform? Why? Last week I said the Honorable Gaston Brown, Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, has put in place a mandatory vaccination program for all government workers. I know that it has been challenged legally by the unions.
All government workers where?
In Antigua.
And he is the Prime Minister of where?
Antigua.
Okay.
Antigua and Barbuda.
Antigua and Barbuda.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So what I'm saying to you...
But not St. Kitts and Nevis, right?
No, but at the same
and
time...
And not the other areas.
At the same time...
But you're asking a question, so I'm attempting to answer.
At the same time...
You wanted to know how come...
The parliamentarian here, if I remember correctly, and if I got the labeling correct, has stated in the debate he was on the side of mandatory vaccination. So how come we are slow to embrace that facet? of our management of the COVID-19.
So if one of the other youth parliamentarians had said, do not mandate it, you would ask a similar question? How come we're mandating it?
One of them did.
No, I have no qualms about the other.
Okay. Well, my duty is to bring the balance, you know. Because you seem to suggest, I just wanted to know whether you're suggesting that because the youth parliamentarian said that, and you seem to connect it and saying, well, if the youth parliamentarian said that, how come we're not doing it? So I was just
I
attempting
needed to be
to...
brought to the fore. In our big sister North, several leaders.
Okay, let me get this. I'm come back to you. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Good evening, Webbo. Mr. Stanley,
Hello.
we in a better status than Antigua. We cannot follow Antigua. With our status and the COVID thing, right? I think it's needed. We in a better status than Antigua. So we don't have to follow Antigua and mandate the vaccination. If we come to a case that we have to do it, then I will agree with you. But right now, we don't have to follow Antigua to do that thing. All right. Good night.
It's not all right. I'm saying to you, you don't wait until the horse bolted out of the barn to close the door. We have lead time, and because we have lead time, we should do what we have to do in order to keep our nation safe.
Yeah, but the way you're saying it, Mr. Stanley, you're saying it like we must, because Antigua,
No.
Guyana also mandated the vaccination too.
I just brought that to the floor as
that also. But you were saying because Antigua do it.
Not
That's how I
necessarily.
got it. That's how I
That's
got
not what
it.
I'm
Like,
saying. I'm
like,
saying
you
before I
saying
heard
that we think it's Nevis should do the same thing. So I'm only telling you that we status and the COVID thing is totally different to Antigua, because from today Antigua have 76 deaths. Right, the people them just are dead like crazy. So the man have to mandate the vaccination because of the status of Antigua and Barbuda. So we don't have to go there right now. We all we have to do just go out and take the vaccination. And however, Dr. Lars also say, right, that when they ask people them, wait a second, like the thing, when you ask them about the tracing, the contact tracing, right?
Yeah.
They don't really answer her.
Right.
So then I tell them, okay, John, James, or whoever they get contact with when they get the COVID. When they tested positive for the COVID, they don't, and she asks them for the contact, they don't answer the lady. So that's why she said that we are at risk. So when we go out in the supermarket and out in the community, we got to be very careful.
Right.
Then nobody talking and all of those things.
What that caller translates into also is that how the responsibility is on each and every one of us. The officials, the health officials and the leaders and so on, they can do only so much.
Well, I agree with you with that, Webber, because nobody could say that the man don't preach about the vaccination. Every minute, you show, Mark show, the Prime Minister's press conference today, the doctors, them, Dr. Lars, Dr. Cameron, everybody, they just preaching that, please, right? That's what Antigua was doing, please. The assembly was begging, please. So she realized that people die now, like fly. One time they got 8 deaths in a one day. So the man just went forward and take his power, right? And mandate the vaccination. Anyway, I'm listening.
Yes.
Listen. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Stanley.
I don't want to be misunderstood. I am not trying to say that we have to follow what Antigua did. I'm saying we have lead time. We had our country on lockdown when the first instance, and they managed it. We had some good national, international, and regional publicity with regard to the safety of St. Kitts Nevis. It translates into economic activity for us to make a dollar.
Okay. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Hi, Webbo. Good night, man. How are you?
All right.
And your panelists.
Good evening.
Mr. Stanley, let me answer the gentleman for you. You said it earlier, but in a different way. I heard it from himself. Nobody tell me so. This word mandatory was used earlier clock, long before Antigua come into the picture. Up to Saturday night, I told somebody about it, and they said they heard it for themselves as well. I know it was said earlier clock. That's all I want to say. Thanks.
Thank you, caller.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Stanley.
So, as it stands, there is certain political pushback, and I could understand about the backlash. But maybe the calculation must be made as to how many votes or voters would adhere to the pushback and lash out at the leadership for the mandatory program that they would put in place. Again, we have lead time. We can't wait until the horse is out of the barn, which I would be repeating myself, to close the gate. If we mandate it, we know that it is mandated and there will be consequences.
Let me ask you this. What would be the consequences?
Well, I did say, but I would not repeat because I had some admonition from a lady, a caller, last week as to.
So then what kind of leader are you? If you are going to put something in place, put consequences, and afraid to say what the consequences are.
Listen, it's already out there, the judge already heard it.
So that is what you're going to tell a new voter on somebody else?
Listener?
Yes.
Listener?
Yes.
Well, let me say this. We must put in a consequence that brings about what we attempting to accomplish.
But what happens there, Mr. Stanley, isn't it so that it tells the difference between a person who is in the hot seat as opposed to somebody who is just talking? Because you're not in the seat, so you don't have to give any definitive answer. Mr. Brand is in the seat, so he has to say specifically what he will do or what he will not do. Correct?
Well, you brought Mr. Brand, who's in the hot seat, to the fore. And Mr. Brand, I hope he doesn't attempt to say things that would come back to haunt him in terms of victory and defeat. Let me spell it out. If Mr. Brand doesn't say it, he doesn't bear the consequences. But Mr. Brantley has come right up to the line.
Yeah, but I was speaking about you. You are making certain pronouncements, and I'm trying to put the
onus,
differentiate them of when a person is in the position when he has to give up an account, as to a person who is not in the position and he just talks. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Hey, Stanley.
hello.
You remember when you were being told about...
Go ahead, Mr. Stanley.
Now, we need to come up with a solution for those who are attempting to disobey. And I'm saying to you, we have to make it as such where they understand that they just don't get away simply because they feel that they have a right, and they would use that right, which I don't think is a right. they have decided to take it and attempting to use it against all of us who are vaccinated. So I'm saying, in lieu of jail time, maybe we can put them in quarantine for a long period then. Since I was admonished in terms of using the word imprisonment for a day, let us put them in quarantine at their expense for 2 or 3 weeks, maybe a month. Ensure that they do not work, they don't get paid as they don't work, as the case might be.
Okay, Naya.
But what the doctor have said was no surprise to me, really. I appreciate the information passed on. No surprise. You know, Webbo, I think one of the things that really make this what it is today is because of the expectation in the beginning. I think those governments thought probably it would have been an easier process of getting herd immunity. That have not proven to be easy, and of course, I believe it's because we thought it would have been easier. Why it have blown up so big now, and the campaign has to be what it is. The campaign is a major campaign, and I think the campaign is going well. The deaths, you know, one death is too much, and of course, but I think we are not generally doing that bad. I believe if one didn't have that expectation that it would have been easy, then this would have been something closer to normal. I'm talking about the exercise and you know, and the campaign that is taking place today. The campaign must continue, and there can always be those who are not going to take no vaccine, who are not going to answer no question. But you know, there's a stigma that comes along with this, and it does not make it easy for anyone to say no or even yes, whether or not they've been vaccinated, because within certain circles you don't want to say you've been vaccinated, because some people would feel like, oh, you are whatever. But you know, I just say, well, but this is a personal thing, and people must really take this on board on a personal level. In every respect, it is so personal. You know, in living up to the protocols, practicing the protocols, and even engaging in taking the vaccine and so forth. It's a very personal thing, and so I cannot say much more than it's going good, and those who are running the campaign, the vaccination campaign, expect that there would be a lot more work to do. And this word that Mr. Stanley talking about, mandatory, that's a troublesome word to, you know what I mean? It's a word I don't really like too much, because it's something I wish that we would never have to come to, because again, you know, you're going to be forcing people to do things they don't want to do, and they're going to be consequences, you know, on both sides. If you take it, if you don't take it, if you force me, if you don't force me. But somehow I feel like it creates an unhappy medium when people are basically forced. In every respect, you know, in terms of relations, in workplace, in terms of relations, in the home, in terms of even in the community, you know, in every respect. So it creates a rough edge, and something that we truly doesn't want in the society. But it's been said that it's for the good or the betterment of all. that message must be taken on board by the general public. I don't think everyone have taken that on board, and I think that's the reason why the campaign is what it is today. But I find I just want to remind the people that it's a very personal decision one is making when one decides to give oneself, not just to follow the protocols, but also to give oneself to be inoculated. But they're gonna always those who refuse that. So we got to work with all parties. I don't think we should really make anything mandatory at all. I believe we must accept the state of affair as it is and find solutions. They're going to be people who face the ultimate. Basically, they're going to be people who die, and they're going to be people who get sick. And from all these instances and circumstances, we are going to learn. And if that's the way, that's the way. It's a sad way to conclude what I have to say, but it's a very personal effort one has to make to stem the flow of COVID.
Okay, let me get this. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Good evening, Webbo boy. How you doing?
All right.
I like this thing about the mandate. Well, what the guy said to me, I must drive on the left, and you could decide whether you drive on the left or the right. Huh? Well, if everybody now knows, and if the whole world is saying, you mandate or you live, well, what you want to do? I don't see how the government of the day, in St. Kitts and Nevis, is going to say everybody must vaccinate. So I run to vaccinate, everybody run to vaccinate, and 20 people say, I'm vaccinate. No reason. And then everybody, like my good friend there, Conrad, say something about a personal reason, personal. I mean, vaccination is not hugging up somebody. It's a personal thing. Vaccination is now in the national interest. And here's the point. Here's where I'm going to catch a lot of people, and the courts are open. If I come to business A and I test, and I come in, I am tested negative for COVID. When I leave business A and I test positive for COVID, that gives me the right to sue business A as not providing a healthy environment. And when I read law, that was about many moons ago, and I used to read law book, they tell me the categories of negligence are never closed. So you can't say that you are not you can't say that you are not negligent because I can't force people vaccinated. And the people who work in here, it's a personal decision, and I cannot force them to vaccinate. But you created in your business place a situation where people are not vaccinated and are working and are tending to people. And I wonder in my own mind, well, how does a person get to a college, and how does a person get to work? And you are not vaccinated, and you come up in front of my face, you come sitting in an office, how are you talking? Well, how are you not vaccinated? And if I get vaccination in your place, I know the lawyers that I would like to see a lawyer that have seen in court that you have not created a safe working place. And they used to tell me a thing, if you bring something in your place, and you create and keep there, anything, if you escape and do harm, you are liable. So that the people who work, who have workers, have to be saying, well, look, I wonder if I am creating in here, a lot of people in here not vaccinated, I am creating in here an unhealthy working place. If you could shut up, okay, everybody here was vaccinated, everybody, you say you have taken steps, all required steps to not to be negligent. And I am now of the view that, well, why would I get vaccinated? If people who go vaccinated, why only would let me eat at the same table, work in the same office? Nobody is receiving any punishment if they're not vaccinated, and nobody is receiving any benefit if they're vaccinated. Well, why would I then go vaccinate? What the vaccination is of no moment. It's null, void, and of no effect if everybody does not feel that they have a right to do it. I mean, I hear people say, well, vaccination coming so quick, and they come in quickly because it come in so quick because they want to find a cure for it. I say, boy, if you call the fire truck, Webbo, and the fire truck come before you think it coming, what are you going to tell you? Hold on a while, hold on a while, are they ready for you yet? If you are sick, God forbid, and if I am sick and somebody call the doctor for me, the doctor come quick. Oh, hold on a while, you come too quick. I mean, the argument, I mean, it frightens me, really, that the people of Sikis and Nevis, I call them hard-head Harry and hard-head Harriet, they have just been crippling Sikis and Nevis. Because by these policies, everybody who has been vaccinated, one or two people have had one or two little things. If tomorrow some snapper coming down the pier down there, and all of them are and everybody's going to eat. No matter if 20 is 5 so those going to eat snapper, one of them snapper then one of us won't get sick, 2 of us won't get sick, maybe 3. So we need to be able to get. The reason why I went and did what I had to do is because I don't see you can't be living in these communities around here, and I'm nowhere around the world unvaccinated. Whether you want to believe it or not, it is not only going to be, and I am a little concerned what Congress said that, oh, let them dead. No. Let them kill themselves. Let them dead and kill people, and let them get up for people pressure upon the society. We need as a society to come together, and I told you, I think I told you and I had a discussion before, that if the vaccine were rolled out by the people, by One Radio Freedom, and the people in the radio station, and they were being rewarded for each person vaccinated, the radio station and all of these people were rewarded for people who they get vaccinated, we would have been 90%, 95%, I'm telling you. I think people, after a while, will stop listening to politicians. All right.
Okay. All right. Cool. Thank you. Yes. Anybody?
Well, I just wanted to say that I think the caller misunderstood what I said. He said that I said to just let them dead. I didn't really say that. I said people will die, as we've been experiencing. And I said the reason why, it's like this is because of the expectation we had in the beginning, that it would have been, much easier to attain herd immunity. But no, I cannot just recklessly say let the people die. That's ignorance.
This herd immunity, my view is, if I were the strategist with this thing, right, I wouldn't call any number. I think I heard today somebody said 80% we're shooting there. I wouldn't call a number. My strategy would be, let's all get vaccinated, and when we get there, that's the number, right? Because I think that we had a misstep when we started talking about 70%, and then in terms of miscommunication and so on, people begin to spin it and figure, well, okay, I'm going to wait till when they get to 70 and I'll be in the other 30 and so on. I think what we need to explain so that people can understand is that this herd immunity thing is not a perfect thing. The caller just mentioned something about, use an example about fish. There could be, and I think I'd use an example about a lottery. Mr. Brand decides to buy 50,000 tickets for the $1 million, and I decide, well, I'll only buy one. And Mr. Brand has 50,000 chances. I have one, but then I want a million.
You only take one chance to win.
Right. So you know, if you get to 70% or 80 or 90, there's still another 10% that can carry this thing around. So to me, my strategy would be, let's all get there. And when we get there, we'll know. Right, Edric?
I said long time ago, if you leave one rotten apple in the barrel, it will affect all the others. Only a matter of time before the rest in the barrel becomes rotten. So therefore, I've advocated, let's get 100%. The herd immunity at 70% might have been an idea just to get people aware and to get them interested and ultimately move to action.
And perhaps something that was not so aggressive.
Exactly. So I am not going to discount the dissertation that was put out there with regard to 70% or herd immunity, as the case might be. It was just a phrase so as to urge people.
It was something that
Let's get
was realistic, but this thing is aggressive, and you know that's when we put certain things in place, and then it didn't quite work. We must be willing to say it and adjust and keep moving, right?
Well,
and I find that in a lot of things sometimes, not that I am always there perfect case, I do a little bluff now and then. But what I'm saying is, when you come straight up and you be honest with people, in the long run it works out better.
True. I don't think they were trying to be dishonest or
Nobody. I'm not suggesting the war. All I'm saying is
misguiding you.
that we put 70%, and then we realize that whereas it perhaps had worked with something that wasn't so aggressive, you say, listen, we had thought that this thing is more tricky than we thought, so we are adjusting.
Quite true.
Well, and that's what I think, Webbo. I mean, things are still unfolding, and God knows how far we got to go with this, you know. And so, you know, things are going okay. You know, I think the people are getting the message, and they're making the decisions, you know, based on the information coming out. The truth is, it's not about hearsay now. The reality is right before our face. You know, so you know, we expect that what is being done is going quite well. It's going quite well.
I saw a story on the news, international news, on TV just before I got in here, and I think the lady was a teacher, and she got COVID, battled it for a couple of weeks, months, was unvaccinated, but was able to leave a message for her two daughters. Please take the vaccine. She died. Right? So, you know, you hear a lot of cases like that, and they say, I like the example that the previous caller made, and he said, so you're going to say, well, I'm sick, call the ambulance, and then said, reach you quick. You know, in the meantime, things are happening, and people are getting sick, and people are dying. Good evening, thank you for holding.
Good evening. Let me turn off this radio. Good evening, Webbo.
Yes, good evening. Could you go ahead, please?
Yes, good evening to your panelists.
Good evening.
Now, this thing about the herd immunity and the changes, it has to do with the variants. That is the problem. Not the problem, that is the answer. When there was only one variant, then they said, well, if 70% get vaccinated, you have the next 30%, who hopefully cannot infect. Any infection will be among themselves. Now you have many variants that are more aggressive than the original one. And you now realize you now have to vaccinate more people. because at the rate at which it is spreading, in no time at all, it would envelop the whole population. So that was the reason. It wasn't any haphazard. It had to do with the variant. The more aggressive the variant, the more people. Now, I don't know how many of us have been listening to the news. Here in New York, people have been given, teachers also have been given the ultimatum. Either vaccinate, and the lady was saying, whether she's the mayor or whatever, if they don't come out, she's going to get the National Guard. And there was the incident, they said, with the bus drivers. They're not going to take any, well, they get National Guards to thing. So when people, you see, if people think you're calling a bluff, then they spin around because you're calling a bluff. But if they say you're serious, this is what happened in Antigua. Gaston said, look, nothing, not going to work and not going to pay if you don't come and whatnot. And the crowd rush. It has to do with how do people take what you say. So if you call in a bluff, well, if you don't think it, and you see some people, well, and they figure, well, till you can't turn them away. Now I heard on the news, a company, somebody took the company to court, and the judge said the company is right. They have a right to defend their business. So when it start up there, for someone, oh, in America, they say, you march, you want to march or you don't want to, no problem. We will put somebody in your place. And the response will change. So it is up to our leaders. When you speak, you must mean what you say. Mean what you say. You have all the children, oh, Italian and take no, whatever. If you say like Trinidad, only vaccinated children will attend class in person. Some of the children will begin to lobby their parents because they want to go to school to meet their friends. But if you dilly-dallying and, oh, I don't think I'm gonna, you say Mayor Motley, it's only a matter of time. All the nice speeches, when you can't get the number down and people think you don't mean, oh, well, it's just a thing and do it. One man you wake up and say, yeah, I have had enough. You know, like when children playing around and you talk to them once, then when you change the tone of your voice, you straighten up. So, I think some people waiting for the ultimatum. All right then.
Okay. You know, I'm thinking here, and this morning, to me, sometimes it's a person's overall philosophy of life. And I did something this morning early. Edric, you know the story about the fellow who had the acreage of lands and so on, and he called people to work? You don't know that story?
The laborer?
Yes, the laborer.
Yeah, okay.
Right. And when he called the first one, he made a deal with them. In other words, you're going to do this amount of work, and I'm going to pay you this amount of money. And then he went and he worked. A little later on, as a couple hours passed, he made another deal with another set, and then so on and so forth. And at the end of the day, he gave the first one
what was agreed to. And then he gave the second one the same amount, and the third one. So the first one, who in our example will be Mr. Brand, he starts making noise saying, well, how come you give Naya the same amount? Now, I said, well, the master said at the time, didn't I give you what we agreed to? Right.
He said yes. I said, well, that's it. So I said, were it I, had it been me, I would have said, also, by the way, how you know what I give Naya? That was none of your business. Anyhow, the way the story goes is this. In the end, the point that he was making with, the master said to him, or the owner said to him, you're going to tell me what to do with my thing? And that, to me, is instructive. And that is what people have to understand in terms of the philosophy. A man's home is his castle. And if the thing belongs to him,
Do what he wants.
He has the right
He does what he wants.
to do what he wants with him.
Yes.
General philosophy. So long before these courts and these companies and so on came up, this thing was written. The general philosophy.
Look, there's nothing new under the sun, you know. And this is why, you see, I said, if you're truthful, you bank on the truth, and wherever things roll, you roll. You don't have to go home and be bent out of shape because things didn't go a person's way. You have told them the truth. They're hard choices, and therefore I have told you the truth. You have to have the intellect and the capacity to determine whether or not you were told the truth. And if the truth is the truth, hard choices, follow. That's why I say governance is not difficult.
Stanley, sometimes you tell people the truth and they will tell you point blank they still not believe.
No, I agree with you.
Well, to be fair, Mr. Brand, people have a history of not believing the truth. How many times you're making a case and you tell the truth and they say, I don't believe you, and then you spin it and they say, oh, okay, I don't be no. That again is the reality. One group of people in particular, which I would not say here, else I might get impeached, but there's one group of people who would rather not hear the truth. Don't you agree with that, Mr. Stanley?
That's quite true.
Oh, okay. And you know the group of people, right? But don't say it.
But the caller before the last put a few things on the table, and one of the point that he put on the table is the matter that persons would be petitioning the court for certain. And we have already been seeing that not only in the US, but I think that what a lot of the governments in this region are trying to do is to try and do gentle persuasion rather than having to move the court. But the caller before, like I said, is absolutely correct that persons are at some point, and people are getting to that point where companies are being taken to court about persons' employment rights. Employees are thinking about going to court for what the rights of the company and so on and so forth. But Mr. Stanley spoke earlier about the Antigua situation. But the reality is that St. Kitts and Nevis was in a better place and continued to be in a little better place than Antigua. We have had far less deaths. One death is one too many. Our vaccination rate has been a bit higher, and the rate of or the numbers of persons who are or were affected or infected with COVID in Antigua certainly has been more. So the situation in Antigua certainly was a bit more dire than St. Kitts and Nevis. We continue to stress and to use or encourage persons to go and take the vaccine.
But what of Mr. Stanley's point, though, Mr. Brand, that though you are in a better place at this point in time, having the knowledge of where you might well get,
yes,
why don't you act now?
Well, and that is where, Webbo, you pointed out to Mr. Stanley that being in the hot seat and making that decision or making those decisions comes with some serious thought and some serious introspection and so on. You have to look at our parameters to get to that point. I believe that some persons or some countries have been forced into that position. And I think that I continue to say from this platform, Mr. Stanley and gentlemen, that I really hope that we wouldn't get to that point where we would have to mandate. I would hope that we can get to 100% without having to mandate.
But are we doing the work, the necessary work? Because what, in my view, seems that is necessary is that we now realize I think about a couple of weeks ago I said that it is my evaluation that we are at a stage where people have determined whether we'll take the vaccine or not.
I think so too.
Right, and then it comes down now to the choices.
Yes.
And then whether or not people want the consequences of the choices. So, what maybe the stage we're at now is whether or not we are going to find out what reason Naya is not deciding to take it as an example,
Yes,
as opposed to brand,
yeah.
and then, you know, carve a particular message or strategy and see how much more we can get, how much closer we can get to 100. Good evening, thank you for holding. Good evening, thank you for holding. Hello,
Yes, good evening. Are you hearing me?
I can hardly hear you.
Yes, good evening.
You have to speak much louder.
Okay, good evening. You hear me?
Caller, maybe you can put the telephone closer to your mouth and speak louder.
Good evening.
Okay, go ahead. Let's see.
Yeah, a while ago you used a Bible,
Caller, do you have a radio on?
I'm far from the
No, the question I asked you was, do you have a radio on?
Yes, but I'm far from the radio.
We're having a feedback still. You don't. Well, why don't you turn the radio off, because you will be able to hear us through the phone. Because we really want to hear your contribution.
Not even inside the house.
Caller, go ahead, please.
I'm not inside it.
Go ahead, please.
Okay, you're hearing me?
It's a little better.
Okay. You used a Bible story a while ago with the husbandman and the laborers, which was really I don't know what point he was trying to make, but yes, a person has the right to do whatever he wants with whatever he has. And then you was making allusion to a similar situation where I think you were speaking of the different businesses. That the owners of these businesses have a right to do with whatever they own, which is true. But the same goes to the individual, because he has a choice to, which if he wants to take the vaccine or if he don't want to. I think one of the things that the authorities can and should do is to maybe put a fine on people who probably find themselves into certain areas and they don't have a mask, especially around town area, because there's where a lot of people gather, and it seems to me that those are the areas where people are contracting the different the viruses. People, when you see people walking around town, find them. And Webbo, I strongly believe, because I've seen an individual, and I believe that there are others, because they are vaccinated, they're walking around with their wide open face and feel like because they are vaccinated that they don't have to wear a mask. And I think all of us understand that even though you're vaccinated, that does not prevent you from contracting anything or spreading anything. And so I strongly believe that these are the people who are spreading this thing. And a strong decision needs to be put forward as to, especially as I said before, when you get into town area, in those areas, and people just going around the place and they don't have a mask on them, they should be fined. They should be fined. I mean, the businesses are doing a good job. I mean, you go in and you have to sign your name, and you have to make sure that you have your mask on, and the different hand sanitizers and whatever.
Caller, could I ask you a question?
Yes, go ahead.
In your example and suggestion that they should be fined, my question is, when you put that in place, who do you think should fine them?
Well, those who are very responsible.
And who would you put to be responsible?
Well, I mean, you have the health authority, and then they should have somebody standing back of them, and the law, the police.
Oh, okay. Just checking.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Thanks much.
Have lead time, and we cannot wait and squander this lead time to see what's going to happen down the road. So it is instructive that we act now.
You think we should act now?
Act now.
Good evening. Thank you for holding. Good evening. You're on the air.
Yeah, good evening, Webbo.
Yes.
Yeah, this afternoon I was listening to the Prime Minister's press conference. And the CMO was given the data. And she mentioned that you had 24% of the infected people not responding. To me, I mean, that don't make sense, I'll tell you why. There's a database, eh? You have the names of the person. All you have to do is run them against the database.
Yeah, to be fair, she said that is ongoing at the moment.
You know, but that to me is the simplest way. You understand what I'm saying, right?
Yes. She what I'm saying is, she did add that they are doing it, running it against the database as you suggested, and in due course, she will inform us accordingly.
That's why it can be done right on the spot.
Yes.
I kept thinking, because if you assume that half of them is unvaccinated, then you have a whole set.
Yeah, because when I heard that report and saw it,
makes sense.
I said this is a little puzzling.
Maybe because I used to work as a statistician. When I say that, it makes no sense. You know.
But that's why it's good when people can explain. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. You know. Just run them against the database. Now another thing. How do you handle people who turn up positive and have no explanation as in terms of contacts? Because if that is allowed to pass, just like when you got HIV, you got to call name. You got a STD, you have to call the contact name. But you have people who don't want to call anybody's name. But in the process, that other person may be spreading it. So I don't know maybe if people even need to be explained in the simplest term that while you think you're protecting me, you are actually infecting somebody else.
So, caller, you don't think that that's the area where we have to do a lot of work?
I think so. I think sometimes you got to explain this thing in the simplest term, you know. You know, we're not asking you to squeal on anybody. I mean, you have to put it down like that, right? We're not asking you to incriminate anybody because we can't charge anybody. You cannot be charged for identifying contacts. And in fact, maybe they should not even be told when they come by your place, you know. You are identified as a contact of somebody who is infected. So it gives cover to the person.
But if not anything else, caller, doesn't it give us a good idea of the type of society that we have?
Yeah, everybody personal. You know the thing about personal. It's selfish.
Privacy.
We are individualistic society now, you know.
Privacy.
Nobody, no longer family and group. And the other day I said to myself, you know, part of the problem is these housing projects that the government's put up. You grow up in a village, you live among your people. We're talking about St. Kitts. From Irish Town, they send you Shadwell. You're from the village, you got a Pice Garden, Shadwell. You know, so you're actually cut off, and that is what is creating a lot of the problems for the people with children. They don't live near anybody who anything to them. So sometimes I think when we're designing these housing projects, we must, you know, think a lot about the people we are putting there, their connection. What you have going up after a while, you have these what we call ideal families, no connection. Many people at home today, the children were sent home, they live in an area, no auntie, nobody there. All right then.
Okay, thank you. Let me get this. This is Talk That Get Results with Edric W. Stanley, the Honorable Spencer Brand, and Conrad Nye Liebert. We'll be back after these.
This is the powerhouse of the Eastern Caribbean, Vaughn Radio.
Builders Paradise is offering a large variety of floor and wall tiles at very competitive prices. Builders Paradise has over 2 million pieces in stock, lots of different styles to choose from. Whether you're renovating or tiling a new house, Builders Paradise has what you need. Wow! Oh, and remember, we're open all day Saturday to serve you better. This is something that you can't refuse. Visit Builders Paradise today at the C.A. Paul Southwell Industrial Site in St. Kitts or call them at 466-4938.
When VON vibrates, the whole Caribbean must shake. 860 AM, the powerhouse.
Back on this episode of Talk That Get Results with Conrad Nye Liebert, the Honorable Spencer Brand, and Edric W. Stanley. What else we got?
To be honest, I did to profit northward. The Honorable...
Okay, let me go west and take this then. Good evening, thank you for holding.
Yeah, good evening again, Webbo. So I think that this COVID matter, and if it were not for the seriousness of it, I would have had a good laugh, you know. Here's a fellow, I met him. I said to him, my boy, what about vaccination? He knows what is the vaccination, he studied it out, he knows that the vaccine behind this. I said, well, how do you do in school? Never even a third farm in high school. But he's a professor of zoology, professor of physics, professor of biology. I said, what? And so this vaccine and this matter here has turned up some professors here, Webbo. I frightened because I don't know, I never heard them even like the name good, but they know what it is. And so I asked them, well, okay. When you say you want to know what's in the vaccine and you want to control all things, what is in the bread you eat this morning? It's got to get it. I said, well, yes. Did you, before you eat bread, go to the bakery and ask to go behind you and say, what is in the bread? He started to say, no. I said, well, why didn't you? Because if you can't trust people to give you vaccine, how you trust people to be behind the bread for you and you come and eat it just so? Who tell you the bread behind for something? And so they say, because as you said there are people, and as you responded to Minister, there are people in St. Kitts and Nevis who don't decide after the vaccine, but they don't change. You ain't gonna change you know how you're gonna change them there? By using heaven's first law. And you know what heaven's first law is? You know what they say heaven's first law is? Order. Order is heaven's first law. So if you say that you have in your place, you are having this type of thing as your uniform, and somebody want to come to work at your place, and they say they don't want to put on the uniform, well then they just can't work there. That's how it is. if we get into a situation where there is order, there will be I think one of our islands order and decorum. And once we get to be orderly and order, because let me tell you something, no matter what you say, and I didn't come this age here because I grew up in a test tube. Unless rain come, some people never take the clothes off you wear. Okay. I see you.
Yeah, okay. All right. Mr. Brand, you wanted to now?
Nothing important.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mr. Brand.
Well, the caller once again continue to stress that our people needs to. Well, I think he's proposing that we don't necessarily continue to use gentle persuasion. We need to probably order them to take the vaccine. I want to appeal to our people, Webbo, that I think that we have in various quarters, in various forums, in many of the situations that we found ourselves in, continue to appeal to the good sense of our people. And the caller give a real situation there where a simple thing as a piece of loaf, yes, we eat it without hesitation, and something that can save our lives, something that can protect our livelihood, something that can ensure that if we are infected with COVID, that can give us a much better chance of survival. That there are all of these questions. I think those of us who grew up in the 70s, and I know as a child at the Charlestown Boys School in the Methodist basement there, downstairs the Methodist, we go down to the Charlestown Health Center and we march down. Those were times when we were ordered to take these vaccines. I can't remember growing up as a child that anyone ever really questioned anything about any vaccine that we were taking. But I think that we are living in a different times, Webbo. Caller is so absolutely right that there are so many experts, there are so many persons who try to give a different view, and everything is now instant. And I think that sadly it is drowning out some of the right message and the correct message, and even those persons who are trying to give the right message and the correct message and the right information, their character and their integrity is being shredded and taken to task. But I think that we don't really have too far to look. We have had experience in these islands before of mandatory vaccination, where growing up we were vaccinated, and it has saved lives. And I think that this COVID vaccination that is ongoing in our region will continue to save lives. Our people just need to avail themselves of what they need to do and go and get it done. It is really sad that we are at this stage where persons who know better are spreading the kind of falsehood and propaganda as it regards to this COVID vaccination initiative. It is something that I feel that ought not to have happened, but it has happened, and it has caused many lives to have been lost. And I think that we would have been in a better place globally if persons who knew better said different things.
Well, he labeled the fellow as not having much schooling or education by the normal standard, and he is now the master of all. He knows it all, and he has all the titles. Now, he's a person who should be categorized as an ignoramus. because you would have done your survey, you have categorized him and realized that he has not had much education based on the normal scheme of things, and therefore he shouldn't be given a platform to hear what he's hearing. And these are the people who sometimes propel the falsehoods, and strangely enough, they are the empty barrels that make the most noise.
Mr. Stanley,
Yes.
so if the person in your example that you extended,
I'm just dovetailing into the chorus.
so don't ask you the question then.
Go ahead.
I really think it was time for a light moment, so I won't ask you.
Go ahead, still asking.
It would be interesting to hear his answer.
and I haven't asked the question. That's a good light moment, because the other fellow who always will interrupt me and tell me that he knows what I think. So I would tell him, okay, finish your question then. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Stanley.
Well, I'm just saying to you, as I have said in the past, people who have an opinion, and that opinion is based on falsehood, must never allow it to be aired, mustn't be given a platform, must not be given any credence. And as the caller stated, he knows this fellow very well. He has not even been to third form, or as the case might be, as we are institution of higher learning is sixth form, and beyond college, university, but he has gotten the labels of a epidemiologist. I mean, I don't remember all the titles he called out, but this is where somebody can lead you down a rabbit hole, and as a result, you are giving them props or some form of recognition which they don't deserve. Therefore, I'm saying to the caller, next time you see the fellow, see if you can pull him and get him to admit or accept the fact that he doesn't know what he's saying, he knows nothing, and therefore he is a carrier of misinformation. Webbo.
You know, Webbo, you know, the whole idea of the pandemic and the scientific nature of it all and all that it entails makes many of us in the public, the majority of the public, just don't understand the terms used when, you know, we are hearing, you know, an explanation about a virus and the way it works and the way the vaccine works and so forth. Sometimes it's difficult to know if an individual is talking rubbish when you don't know at all what he's talking about. You might listen a well-learned individual and he might have the right message. Another individual well-learned as well, and he might have the wrong message. An individual in the public may not know which one is the right or the wrong message. These are two well-learned persons speaking, giving two different opinion. So sometimes you just don't know what you're hearing. You just don't know how to evaluate it, you know, because this whole thing is so well coached in scientific terms and at times medical terms. Let's face it, you know, even when Dr. Twade speaks at times, and I know he tried very hard to break it down into the simplest terms, but you at times find it difficult to relate specifically as to what is being said and understand at times.
You must take.
There's a lot of information out there. A lot of people is saying a lot of stuff, and it's coming through and reaching the general public through social media and other means. And yes, there's this tug of war and this war, about the information. The information received, the ears that are receiving the information. It's been said that those who are anti-vaccine seems to be reaching the people more than those, but I don't think so. But generally, it adds to the whole skepticism, and let's don't be ignorant about this. People have reasons to be skeptic. But I think we are going round and round and round and round, because I've been saying this about 6 months or 10 months in the past, and that's why I'm saying tonight things are moving, and I think the information is getting out there. Those who are going to conform will conform, and there are going to be those who won't, but to me, the exercise is going quite well. It's not. We shouldn't be thinking about, giving up on any front, really. And we will have to live with the pandemic. We have to live with COVID. Look at what's been happening. Okay, there's a state of emergency, and they had such big event like the cricket and so forth. I am not going to sit here and say, oh, they shouldn't have had this, or they shouldn't have had this, they shouldn't have had that thing of in general and about culture, because I think life have to go on. But at the same time, individually, we must remain aware of our indulgence and the way we involve ourselves on a personal level and the things we do in order to win this battle. But we'll have to live with it, and there are going to be those who are not vaccinated. We have to live with them too, because the word vaccination, I don't think it's going to be ever applied to the whole population. It's going to probably apply to government workers and so forth, but to the whole population, that would be something which I personally cannot imagine would take place. So we'll have to live with it, and personally we'll have to be very astute as to how we live our life, as it relates to the pandemic, the fight that we're up against, basically. I think it's going okay. We wish that no one have died, and we wish that we didn't have to be doing all this. But I do think it's the program is going okay. It doesn't make no sense at this point that we really divide the society and make some feel really bad about themselves. We are all in this thing together, and we got to share the space. We got to share the space. So we just got to be mindful of our own lifestyle and the way we connect and deal with people on this matter. Vaccine or no vaccine, we are all here have to deal with this situation, and so it's going okay. And more powers to those, the frontline workers, those who have put themselves at risk on a daily basis. Yes, we want to see the economy come back. We want to see the cruise ship come back. But are we not increasing the risk when we are really encouraging these to the fullness? And even though I've just said we got to live with it, but still we still have to be mindful as to what we encourage, what we allow to take place. Even so, like the cruise ship, those who are running that scheme, they have to be so careful as to how this scheme is playing out and so forth. Yes, the cricket, culture, everything have to have an extra degree of carefulness and mindfulness in these times, because it's not a good situation. And I still think we are doing good enough. And campaign goes on. The campaign goes on.
Well,
And people continue to yield. People continue to yield, and people continue to be to become or to be made wiser by their experiences. You know, this is not now hearing about in the States. In Antigua, how much people dead? So close there is to Nevis. And so we are experiencing COVID now, and it gives us a good chance to reflect upon ourselves, how prepared we are, and how we're going to put, or what foot we're going to put forward.
Okay,
in
let me
this matter.
Let me take this. Good evening. Thank you for holding. Okay, caller, please call back. Yes, Edric, you wanted to say something quickly.
Naya kept saying we are doing all right and okay, and we are in this together.
Yeah.
We're not in this thing together.
We're not?
We're not.
Okay.
And let's face it, those people who refuse to give their status as to whether they're vaccinated or not, they're not together with us. Those people who, in fact, have not taken it, they know they haven't taken it, and they know who they are. And they must be honest, not only to themselves, but to the rest of us. And therefore, we're not all in this together.
You know, Edric, you are a heavyweight, you know. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Yeah, man. Good evening, Webbo.
Yes.
How you doing?
All right.
Okay. Long time you ain't hear me, but I ain't give up, I'm still here.
Yes.
And I just want to say a little one tonight, nothing long. And good evening, Mr. Stanley and Naya.
Good evening. And
Good evening.
Okay. Now, a lot of people vex with the owners of businesses for the rules and the regulation that they decide must govern their business. But there is a popular name brand business in the Americas, and it has a long chain of the business. And you know what it has when you enter the door? Big and broad, no shoes, no shirt, no service. And nobody at all carry their businesses to court. Because they realize, well, okay, they own the business and they have the right to whatever rules or regulation they want. So I don't see why people got to fret and fuss and want to carry this business to court, because this business said, listen, you are not vaccinated, and I would not have you in here to contaminate my employees and my customers and my business. Thank you, Webbo.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
so, Webbo, Naya spoke a mouthful, but at the same time, he made some contradictory statements. Anyhow, let me say this. The people who are educated enough to fool other people. You got a fellow named Tucker Carlson. And I could tell you, he has spilled so much garbage. And people just gobble it up. And there are people who are sensible enough to be able to decipher the garbage, but yet they're not dispelling it. And there are other people who are influential enough, like Trump and his gang. So much misinformation, disinformation, so much untruthfulness. And the people are misled, completely misled, to the extent where Biden has lost, his poll numbers has gone down simply because he's not perceived to be doing very well in terms of this variant. And this is part of the misinformation, half-truths, lies that's abound out there. And
Do you
therefore,
think there will ever be a world without opposition?
no, Webbo,
You think there will ever be a world without scammers?
no, Webbo,
You think there'll ever be a world without gangsters?
no, Webbo,
You think there'll ever be a world without Satan?
No Webbo.
Okay.
He's the biggest youngster. And, you know, I said to the Lord, this fellow is causing so much trouble down here. You got the power to not only to tell him get behind, but to keep him in jail forever. He is the scammer.
So you're aware that all these things must be.
But there is a greater power, a higher power, that can control where this thing is in terms of Satan. So I'm saying people like Tucker Carlson, he's smart enough to coin certain things, put certain things out there in writing, print, broadcast, media, as the case might be, where people believe those who are not so well.
But you will agree that on the one hand you have people who are pretty smart, who you claim put out false information and people believe. You are aware that there are other people who are just as adept.
Yes.
Who can counteract that.
Right.
Okay.
That's
Just
correct.
checking.
So, but the counteracting is not swift enough, as comprehensive enough, and consequently, we got this variant that is plaguing the world, and more closely home.
That's the final word from Edric W. Stanley. Thank you all very much for joining us. This program repeats tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock following the VON News Minute. Join the Honorable Mark Grantley tomorrow evening at 8 o'clock for On Demand. Thank you all again for joining us. This is your voice in the community. You all have a wonderful evening.
Views and opinions expressed in the preceding program are solely those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of the news